Creamer, and I'm here with Conversations with Creamer, and today we have our ongoing guest, James Walrod. Hey.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
It's beautiful out. We finally stopped the rain.
We did. I'm glad to be here. It's a great view where we are.
So today, James came to me with this amazing story. People don't realize that VA loans can get extremely creative. They probably had some of the most flexibility in the industry as far as the different types of things that you can do with a VA loan. So I'm going to let James do his legal spot, and then we're going to go into if you have a seller willing to help you with some things, the VA loan can be extremely creative. So your pitch.
Absolutely. So for the compliance police out there, I'm James Walrod with Veterans United Home Loans. My NMLS number is 260324. Thanks, Alison, for having me. We were just kind of chatting about a very creative scenario that we were just able to close to help a young veteran and his young family to buy a home. So they came to my office and said, we really want to buy a house. They recently had a child. And the neighborhood where they were renting, they didn't feel safe there anymore. Their priorities had changed now that they had a child, and they said, you know what, we really got to get out of here as soon as possible. We need to close in 30 days. We would close in less time if we can. The problem is that they were in a lease for another 4 months to the tune of about $1,000 a month. And they did not have an additional $4,000 to either buy that lease out or even to make a mortgage and a rental payment simultaneously for a couple of months.
That can hurt.
That could absolutely hurt. Most people can't afford 2 housing expenses at one time.
Yeah.
And so we talked to them about a very unique rule that the VA loan allows, which is they will allow you to get all of your closing costs paid. There's no cap to that. The guidance there is that it's whatever the customary closing costs are in your area. So they can all be paid as far as closing costs go. You can get an additional 4% of the purchase price. So, for example, at $200,000, you can get an additional $8,000 on top of the closing costs from the seller to pay any prepaid items, which are things like your insurance premium and then debts. So, in this case, the agent was aware that the lease buyout was an important thing. So when they approached sellers about this young family making an offer, they said, listen, they need their closing costs paid for, and by the way, they need an extra $4,000 to go right towards the lease buyout.
Good for the agent, not being afraid to ask.
Absolutely. I mean, these folks said, this is what we need in order to get to a house. Help us. And so I think there was a few sellers that they went through that said, no way, I'm not going to pay 3% of the purchase price plus $4,000.
High in the sky. It's not going to be necessarily the easiest move, but it's possible.
Absolutely. And they found a seller who had a decent amount of equity in the house. They were very ready to move. They actually already were purchasing another home and moving outside of the area. And so with just kind of honesty and full disclosure, they said, we need our closing costs paid and we need our lease buyout. And here's the letter from our landlord that says it's going to cost $4,000. And that seller agreed. So at closing, this family got all their closing costs paid, so $0 out of their pocket. And then they got an additional $4,000 that was paid directly to their landlord. And they have no more rent payment. They're out of their lease. They're bought out of their lease, and they're moving forward and moving into their new house.
Well, that landlord won too, because I'm sure they're going to rent it out and double up on those payments.
Yeah, landlords usually win. They're like Uncle Sam.
James, that is so encouraging, because I think sometimes we hear the radio shows, that you have these pitches from real estate companies and gurus that come in, and a lot of times it does sound too good to be true. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to venture to say 75% of the time it probably is too good to be true. These aren't stories that happen every day. But I think the moral of this is it doesn't hurt to ask. And then to also make sure that you're working with a lender who understands what the guidelines are, because you can't necessarily do this with an FHA loan or a conventional loan. There may be some other things that can be done, but it's important to, one, find the agent that's willing to take the time to seek out a seller who will help you, but also making sure that the lender knows, yes, this is something we can do and it's not going to fall apart.
Absolutely.
At the end of the rainbow.
That's a great point. This is very VA specific as far as the flexibility with getting debts paid off. And in this case, I really attribute the success really to three things. One, the buyer came in and said, here's what I need. They were very, very open and honest about their current financial situation, about the timing that they needed to move as soon as possible, but hey, here's the roadblock in front of us, and what can we do? So they were very open and honest, which allowed myself and the agent to go, okay, well, here's what you can do. It may take a couple of sellers to find that right one.
Yeah.
But they did it. And then the second thing was having, like you said, a lender who can say, great, well, I understand that roadblock, but I understand your end goal is to get into a house as soon as possible. Here's what you can do that's within the guidelines and allowable for you to be able to move forward. And then for the agent to trust us and say, okay, that's kind of a tall order to ask for an extra $4,000, but let me do some research, let me do my due diligence, and let me find the house that fits for these folks.
Yeah.
And it all worked out really great for them.
Moral of the story as well is there are a lot of online companies that, we're competing with, where you don't need the agent anymore, you don't need the lender face-to-face anymore. But this is one of those stories that you needed to be handheld with body to body, belly to belly, face to face, person to person. It's not something that an online company or a .com company might have been able to do for that client.
That's exactly right. We needed to sit down and have that hour conversation, which was, let's talk about what you need. I mean, They changed a diaper in my office while we were talking. So that's getting real with your clients. And that's what you really need to do. I think that the face-to-face meeting can be really important. Sometimes you can't have the face-to-face meeting, but a really good phone conversation where you have husband and wife on that conversation with myself, and then I can follow up with a conversation to the agent to go, here's what we talked about and here's what they need. It's invaluable.
Well, it again proves the point, though, for me, buyers and sellers do need face-to-face commitment with a person when going through these transactions, because there are so many hurdles that come up that you cannot do through a Zillow transaction.
Sure.
It's just not going to happen. So it's encouraging to know that, one, that agent, like you said, took a tall order and said, you know what, I'm willing to stick it out and do what I can to help these people. Because I know about 75% of us would have went, oh boy, this is going to be too hard. I don't know if I want to help. Yeah. So that's really encouraging. So we're getting ready to start planning some Facebook Live events. We'll go ahead and talk a little bit about that here. And the focus is going to be on the different unique products that the VA has to help buyers, things that you might not have known, roadblocks and stories, some true, some false, so that you can kind of gauge which way you want to go and know whether or not the lender you're talking to is educated. Not all of them are doing wrong. They just may not be educated on the different processes. So
absolutely, we're excited to get some of that really good information out there. There's so many myths about the VA loan that sometimes folks don't have all their information correct, and then there's so many ways that we can be creative to really help make sure that our clients are getting the absolute best deal for their situation.
We closed a unique one years ago. It was the windows. I think it was $3,000 worth of windows. My client had bought a house, and the windows were plate glass. Mm-hmm. They didn't open. None of the windows opened, so they had to literally install. But they were able to qualify over and above with no detriment to their loan, no jumping through hoops, because these windows were able to come in under a certain price. Mm-hmm. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to dig in a little bit more over the next couple weeks, and hopefully some Facebook Live events where people can ask questions. So
stay tuned. That's coming.
Well, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.